Welcome once more to Virtual Sunday, a presentation of Whatsoever You Do Incorporated. I'm Norbertine Father Tim Shilcox, grateful to be with you on this sixth Sunday in Ordinary Time, this Valentine's Day 2021, and also this Mardi Gras Sunday, the last weekend before we begin Ash Wednesday and Lent of 2021. And especially the Gospel passage gives us, I think, a program for Lent of 2021, if we would allow. It's from the first chapter, so early in Mark's account of Jesus' ministry, he encounters a leper. He heals the leper and tries to keep it quiet, but the leper can't contain himself. He goes off healed and lets everyone know so that people begin to press in on Jesus for their share of this healing ministry which he's begun to exercise. But two things, if I could suggest to you, that maybe will help us work with this reading in terms of our own personal walk, in terms of the global pandemic continuing on as well. First of all, the leper says to Jesus, "If you will to do so, you can make me clean." This isn't contained in the story of the 10 lepers that Jesus heals. They're desperate. They cry from a distance, "Jesus, Son of David, have pity on us." But this leper, it's a bit different. "If you will to do so, you can make me clean." And Jesus says, "I do will it," as if to say, duh, of course, that's who I am. Salvation, another word for healing. I do will that you should be healed. Important for us to realize that when we approach Jesus for healing, for forgiveness, for insight, for guidance, for direction, for peace, Jesus does will that we should be whole, that we should be healed, that we should be saved. He's God the Almighty's investment in it, his words and his actions, his life and his death and resurrection. Another way to put it, it struck me this way when I was listening to confessions on a regular basis at Resurrection during my time there. People would come, and I realized on a Saturday afternoon, God has fun forgiving our sins. Jesus has fun healing us, making us whole. How would that change the way you and I approach Jesus? To realize that he's not some tight-fisted old miser, begrudgingly offering grace or mercy or healing or wholeness. Jesus has fun. Jesus delights in healing us if we will approach him as that leper did. And you realize, of course, from the first reading from Leviticus, that leper was breaking all sorts of protocol. Moses had laid down the law. He's supposed to yell, "Unclean, unclean," tear open his garments so that his leprous flesh could be exposed. No hat to hide any sores on the top of his head. And the other thing, he must make his abode outside the camp. The leper broke all these conventions. He approached Jesus, it says in the gospel. He came to Jesus, knelt down and begged him. And Jesus did an amazing thing here too. He also broke the prescriptions of Jewish law. Moved with pity, Jesus stretched out his hand and touched him. Jesus touched the leper. He wasn't afraid, even though prescriptions of the law would have made anyone who dared to come close to a leper or touch a leper himself. The community was so afraid that they pushed the lepers beyond the edge, beyond the margins, beyond the peripheries. But Jesus touches this man. And brothers and sisters, as we look into Lent, Jesus is willing to touch us, not just where we're all virtuous and holy and prayerful and charitable and compassionate. Those things delight him, of course. But his focus for you, for me, for our church, our culture, in our relationships, in our past and in our present, Jesus wants to touch the leprous part. the pustule, the blotch, not so much on our skin, but on our soul, on our spirit. Jesus wants to reach and touch that place where we're afraid, where we're ashamed, where we're embarrassed, where we might draw the conclusion that our sin is unforgivable. Our state or status somehow renders us unworthy, undeserving of Jesus' care. Of course, we're all unworthy, but that doesn't stop Jesus. He's willing to go beyond all that, in a sense, false humility. If we behave like the leper, approach him. Let him reach into our wound, our hurt, our shame, our sin, our bad habit, whether it be pride or lust or gluttony or laziness, whether we're holding on to a petty grudge or a feud, we don't even know what it's about, but we hold on to it and hold back our forgiveness to another, how silly it is, but Jesus is willing to touch that. And the other thing, brothers and sisters, our first anniversary on COVID in these days. And I heard one priest characterize the Spirit as being sort of a COVID fatigue that we're going into. Just sort of tempted to throw in the towel. I mean, in some ways, the practices that we must observe, keeping our social distance, masking up whenever we're in public or in church or wherever it might be, they're so counterintuitive to the whole way that Jesus has been. To the whole way, for sure, I'm thinking of how we were formed as priests in the 80s and began to serve as priests in the 90s. Set aside the masks. Be yourself. Be honest. Come clean. Trust. Trust in the amazing love of God in Jesus Christ. Unmerited, undeserved, unstoppable. Doesn't mean, of course, that we can throw away the masks that are required by statute, by order. Doesn't mean that we should be reckless. But St. Paul says in the middle reading today from 1 Corinthians, imitate him as he imitates Christ. It seems to me that a good program for Lent of 2021, to let Christ reach in where Christ wants to reach in, beyond the mask, beyond the fear, beyond any guilt or shame or hesitation or reservation. And then as the church, and that's individual Christians and the universal church and everywhere in between, married couples, parents, parishes, staffs, that we should reach out as Jesus into the daunting, disturbing, sometimes even disgusting disguise of the poor, those who might be cast as lepers here and now, those who might be afraid to let anyone touch them in a wound or a hurt or a place of shame. If we let Jesus touch us there, we'll have what we need. We'll know how to be tender and compassionate, courageous and undaunted, reaching out in his name as his body, the church, crucified and buried but risen from the dead, to those lepers we encounter in these 40 days of Lent ahead. Party up a little bit. Those of you who have sweethearts, celebrate, let them know you love them, and get ready for Lent so that Jesus can touch, and through us, touch others.